There is no doubt, space is an extremely dangerous place. But only a handful of space travelers have actually died there. For many wannabe astronauts, the idea of venturing into the great unknown would be a dream come true. But over the past 50 years, there's been a slew of spaceflight-related tragedies that are more akin to an astronaut's worst nightmare. In the last half-century, about 30 astronauts and cosmonauts have died while training for or attempting dangerous space missions. But the vast majority of these deaths occurred either on the ground or in Earth's atmosphere, below the accepted boundary of space called the Kármán line, which begins at an altitude of about 62 miles or 100 kilometers. However, of the roughly 580 people who have so far ventured into space, only 3 have actually died there. Early in the space race, both NASA and USSR experienced a surge in deadly jet crashes that killed a number of pilots testing advanced rocket-propelled planes. Then, of course, there was the Apollo 1 fire in January 1967, which killed astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee in a horrific manner. During a launch simulation, a stray spark within the cabin of the grounded spacecraft, which was filled with pure oxygen, ignited. This led to an uncontrollable fire that quickly overwhelmed the doomed crew, leading to their tragic deaths as they struggled in vain to open the pressurized hatch door. We had done exactly the same test the night before but without the hatch closed, so we weren't on 100% oxygen. Walter Cunningham, lunar module pilot of Apollo 7, told Astronomy. So when the Apollo 1 crew died, it was a couple of weeks later before they started picking up the pieces, and at which point we were assigned the prime crew of the first manned Apollo mission. A little less than 2 years later, in October 1968, Cunningham, Wally Schirra, and Dan Eisel became the first Apollo crew to successfully venture into space. Over the next 3 years, Apollo astronauts completed 7 more missions, including the first moon landing during Apollo 11 and the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission. Then on June 30th, 1971, humankind witnessed the first and so far only deaths to occur in space. The first space station to park itself above Earth's atmosphere was the USSR Salyut-1, which launched unmanned on April 1971. Just a few days later, a crew of 3 Soviets blasted off aboard Soyuz 10 with the goal of entering the space station and staying in orbit for a full month. Though the Soyuz 10 crew docked safely with the Salyut-1, issues with the entry hatch prevented them from entering the space station. During their premature return trip back to Earth, toxic chemicals leaked into the air supply of Soyuz 10, causing one cosmonaut to pass out. However, all 3 members of the crew ultimately made it home safe with no long-lasting effects. Just a few months later, on June 6th, the Soyuz 11 mission took another crack at accessing the space station. Unlike the previous crew, the 3 Soyuz 11 cosmonauts, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsavev, successfully entered Salyut-1. Once aboard, they spent the next 3 weeks not only setting a new world record for the longest time spent in space, but also carrying out loads of experiments focused on how the human body deals with the extended periods of weightlessness. On June 29th, the cosmonauts loaded back into the Soyuz 11 spacecraft and began their descent to Earth. And that's when the tragedy struck. To those on the ground, everything about Suez 11's re-entry seemed to go off without a hitch. The spacecraft appeared to make it through the atmosphere just fine, ultimately landing in Kazakhstan as planned. It wasn't until recovery crew opened the hatch that they discovered all 3 crew members inside were dead. Yes, all of them were dead. Outwardly, there was no damage whatsoever, recalled Karim Karimov, chair of the State Commission in Ben Evans' book Foothold in the Heavens. The recovery crew knocked on the side, but there was no response from within. On opening the hatch, they found all 3 men in their couches, motionless, with dark blue patches on their faces and trails of blood from their noses and ears. They removed them from the descent module. Dobrovolsky was still warm. The doctors gave artificial respiration. Based on their reports, the cause of death was suffocation. The fatal accident was determined to be the result of a faulty valve seal on the spacecraft's descent vehicle that burst open during its separation from the service module. At an altitude of 104 miles, the deadly combination of leaking valve and the vacuum of space rapidly sucked all the air out of the crew cabin, depressurizing it, and because the valve was hidden below the cosmonauts' seats, it would have been nearly impossible for them to fix the problem in time. As a direct result of the decompression death of Suez 11 crew, the USSR quickly made the shift to requiring all cosmonauts to wear pressurized space suits during re-entry, a practice that's still in place today.